Nice backdrop. That used to be a bank, by the way, in the old days. And slowly we lost our banks. But it's now a preschool center, very nicely located. One of the many simple things about Tamanjaro. Well, you've seen my exchange of letters with PM. I won't go through the full substance of my letters, but maybe I can highlight a few of the key points that led me to this decision. It wasn't a rushed decision. I've been thinking about it for some months. I wanted to wait to see whether President Halimah was going to stand again. But people have been talking to me for some time. I said it is a difficult decision because I'm very comfortable as a policymaker. But I think we are entering a fundamentally different era, fundamentally different times. Some of it we can tell how the world is already changing. We can tell how our domestic environment is changing. People have more varied views, more varied preferences. That we can tell. That's to be expected. Singapore's maturing as a population, as an electorate. That's to be expected. And I think the 4G leadership will be able to deal very well with that and win trust with Singaporeans, even when people have more diverse views. But what's truly worrying is what's happening internationally. Because that's not just about the risks we know, but it's also about the risks we do not know. It is a fundamentally more uncertain environment, very likely to be more fractured, but fundamentally more uncertain. The world is now set up for crises. The world is now set up for crises. Economic crises, pandemics, which are going to keep coming, but most worryingly, geopolitical conflict. Frictions, tensions, sometimes maybe even overt conflict. And we've got to hold our own as Singapore. Very small country, strong reputation, built up over the years, but we've got to hold our own so that the population holds together. We can still do well as Singaporeans and feel good about being Singaporeans. And that requires first that Singaporeans themselves keep the compact. Multiracial, multi-religious, people of different political persuasions, different views on many things, but remaining faithful to each other as Singaporeans. Keep the compact through thick and thin, through crises. As the Chinese say, 风雨同舟. Through the most difficult of times, hold together, because we are in the same boat together. But there's a second element of it, besides our social culture and keeping that compact. And that is the Singapore system of governance. And the elected presidency is a key pillar within that system of governance. He or she is not part of the executive, making policy decisions, but he or she plays a very important role as a check on the system and in ensuring the system is stable through thick and thin. You know the functions of the president, of course. The constitutional roles in guarding the reserves doesn't mean it can never be used. Each year, in fact, we use significant income from the reserves, and that itself is a function that the president has to oversee, ensuring that the income spent from reserves is in line with reasonable assumptions about the future. And from time to time, we may even have to draw on reserves, hopefully very rarely, but we're in for tough times. And secondly, ensuring that the system retains its integrity. And the key to the Singapore system, quite rare when you look at it internationally, is a system of appointing the right people to the key positions in the civil service and the other arms of government. And that has to remain, no matter who's governing Singapore. 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And the president plays that important role. But the president also has to be a unifying figure at a time when people have more varied views, more varied preferences, even more varied politics, and most importantly, of course, a unifying figure in a multiracial society. That's precious to Singapore. Our most important asset, a multiracial society. And the president has to be a unifying figure in that regard as well. And thirdly, the president as head of state has to project Singapore outward, project our interests, project what has become a Singapore voice of reason. Not always the same voice. We often don't have a house view on something that we go around parroting, but it's a Singapore way of thinking that is rational, that is balanced, that is neutral, and thinks of what's in our interests, but also in the interests of the larger world. And we find a reasonable way of putting our views across. And besides the Prime Minister, other ministers, the head of state can perform that role. And because of my various previous roles and current roles internationally, I would also expect to be active in that position if I'm fortunate to be elected president. I make no assumptions about my chances in this race. I've never made assumptions in all the elections I've taken part in. This is different because it's not a political contest. Unlike general elections I've been through, this is not a political contest. This is about choosing the right person, but I still make no assumptions about my chances. I put myself forward to serve to the best of my ability, using all my experience in economics, in finance, in international affairs, and the standing I have internationally. I put myself forward to serve Singaporeans in this new role. Not a political role, but a different one that has to be above politics. It has to be above politics. And I feel the time is now right for me to serve in this role and keep the Singapore system strong, keep our social compact strong by being that unifying figure and ensuring that the integrity of the system is here to last. So let me say that to explain a little further why I've made this decision. It wasn't an easy decision, but I feel that this is the right thing for me to do at this point.
Hi, I'm Natasha from the Times. So you actually answered one of my questions, but I would like to ask you, would you think that race would be a disadvantage since this is an open election?
Race is an issue everywhere in the world. It's an issue in the United States, in the UK, everywhere. And you find exceptions to the rule. I think in Singapore, particularly when you're new in politics, it will be an issue. People look at you for the first time, they don't know you well. I have the advantage of having been around for some time. I have not, it has not been an issue for me in Jurong. But I guess I also have the advantage of being known to Singaporeans and having been a minister in various capacities for some time, in education and finance and other areas, and even in education, I would say. I had very strong support from all segments of the community. So it hasn't been an issue for me. That doesn't mean it isn't an issue from time to time everywhere in politics. I hope it is less of an issue in future. I think it will be less of an issue in future as well. Singaporeans are changing. But in my case, I would say it has not been an issue.
From Zappa. So you mentioned previously, long time ago, that you have not thought of being a PM. Then why president? And when do you actually make that decision of running for election for presidency?
Well, you know, a lot of my instincts were shaped as a sportsman. I spent my growing years spending 200% of my time in sports. And I played many games. But I found in almost all the games I played, particularly competitive field games at a very high level, that I never liked being center forward. In fact, I didn't particularly like being the person who scored goals. But I enjoyed greatly, and for some reason was quite good, at being centre half, left half, sometimes fullback. I don't know why, but I like guarding the back, and I like planning the game. And I enjoy making a deceptive pass to the person who's really the centre forward to make the most of the ball. So that's me. I'm not a centre forward. I've always been a centre half or half back and sometimes a full back. But we all play critical roles in that same team.
Hi.
Then when did you make that decision? Specifically, when did you come
On which one?
to run for elections for
President? Well, I've been thinking about it now for several months because people have been asking me. To be frank, even when I sit down in my hawker center every week, people come up to me. They're not, very often not my residents, but as you know, in Singapore, one of the favorite pastimes is people go around the island looking for food to eat in hawker centers. I get people just coming up to me and asking me. And I have a good laugh and sort of wave it off. But I know that they're not joking, and they do want me to consider. And in recent months, I thought harder about it, in part because of the way the international environment was changing. And my conviction is that Singapore can do well and weather the storms, wind or rain, if we hold together and our system is strong. System of governance is strong. So it's both about people holding together, but also about our system of governance. The two go together. If our system of governance falls apart, and there's no check on the government being able to draw on reserves or appointing its own people willy-nilly, the trust of the people itself will easily dissipate. They go together in this small country. Once Madame Halima, of course, announced the decision, I knew I had to take it very seriously. I was leaning that way already, but once she made her decision, I felt I had to take it seriously. And once I made up my mind, I felt, look, this is a very important matter. No point hedging and disguising the fact that I intend to stand. I should just come out openly and say it.
Minister, what are some of your priorities if you are elected, and what do you hope to achieve if you are elected that you cannot already do in your role being as part of several statutory boards or even international bodies?
It's a fundamentally different role. First, of course, the role of the president constitutionally is unique to the president, and it's not that a senior minister or any minister can play, which is to be the second key and to have to vet key appointments in government. That's a role unique to the president. Second, I think, as I mentioned before, ministers, MPs, many others are part of the to and fro of politics. They are in the political fray. The president has to be above the political fray. And that's what I mean when I say the president can play a unifying role. And I offer myself partly because through my background, everyone knows who I am, and they know that I have a independent streak, shall we put it that way. I think I can play that unifying role on race, religion, social backgrounds, the way you respect people, not look big and look small, up and down, and also people of different political persuasions. I feel I can play that role. And finally, I think as a head of state, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I could play a very helpful role for Singapore internationally as well. I do play a very active role currently, but as a head of state, you have a different stature in your international roles.
Sorry, sir.
Is there anyone filling in for you as MP to take care of the residents in Jurong?
Yes. So we've got it. One of the reasons why I'm going to step down only in a month's time. The main reason is I've got some very important official commitments, including some international ones. But it will also allow us to make sure that all arrangements are in place in Jurong itself. What I have in mind, actually I've discussed it with the Jurong MPs, is that for my MPS, Mr. Sean Huang will double up and cover both Taman Jurong as well as Jurong Spring. For all other events, meeting residents on other matters, whether it's for just keeping in touch with them or solving problems, the other MPs are going to take turns as well. And once we decide, well, not once we decide, but once the party decides on who might be a potential candidate for the next round, he or she will have to be on the ground working very hard. So that's the system. I think Jurong will be served very well because we work very cohesively as a team. I must say I've had a wonderful team, all of the same cast of mind, same way of looking at politics and looking at service, and they will be working doubly hard to make sure that everyone is well served, including those in Taman Jurong who will not have me as an MP.
So if I could ask, if you were to win the election presidency, what would that mean for the reserve presidency elections?
This is, of course, an open contest this year. It's not a reserve presidency. But the rules have been laid out very clearly as to when a reserve presidency kicks in. It'll be a very long time before we have a reserve presidency. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to our humble neighborhood of Taman Jurong. There's a very good hawker center next door with some exceptionally good bak chor mee, exceptionally good roti prata, the cheapest coffee in Singapore, and a lot of other fare that you should take your time to enjoy. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.